Good evening from London. This is Dr. Dermot Hudson, Chairman of the British Group for the Study of the Juche Idea, Chairman of the Korean Friendship Association of the UK, and official delegate of KFA UK. And welcome to our live stream, and hello to the people who've just joined. Glad you could join us. I recently looked on the Wikipedia at my own entry, which, by the way, is not created by myself at all. I'm not sure who created it, but I see I've been promoted to the status of a UK far left politician. So anyway, that is mildly amusing to me. Anyway, what I'm going to do tonight is I'm going to speak for about 20 minutes on a presentation, and then I will take some questions from the audience and going to finish in about an hour's time. And of course, this will be uploaded as well. So, people will be able to watch it afterwards. And say again, thank you for joining this. And good evening to comrade Felix Ironman, and good evening to our comrade from Sri Lanka. So I decided to deal with a number of subjects tonight. And first of all, this came up on a Twitter chat. Someone asked, why does respected Marshall Kim Jung Un get 100% of the vote at elections in People's Korea? Well, first of all, it is not strictly speaking true that respected Marshall Kim Jung Un gets 100% of the vote in elections, because the bourgeois media made a big deal out of the fact that last year in November 2023, in elections to the provincial, city and county People's Assembly, basically local elections, 0.09% of electors voted against the list for deputies to provincial People's Assemblies, and 0.13% voted against the list for the city and county People's Assemblies. Of course, this is perhaps hair splitting. It is very near to 100%. And it's also worth mentioning that in the last Supreme People's Assembly elections, Marshall Kim Jung Un himself was not actually a candidate because they amended the constitution. The 100% vote, or 99.9% vote, is not actually for Marshall Kim Jung Un personally, but for the people's government that represents the people and the socialist system of the DPRK. But this brings us back to the question that our friend on Twitter had raised. Why do 99% or 100% of DPRK citizens vote for the people's government in the DPRK? The reasons are as follows. In the DPRK, there is free housing, free healthcare, free education, low-cost food, and low-cost public transport. What is there to vote against? Only a crazy, demented, mentally ill person would vote against such things. Think about it logically. In People's Korea, there is single-hearted unity, which no other country in the world has. The DPRK is based on the Juche idea, the philosophical principle, which is that man is the master. Thus, because of the socialist ownership of the means of production, which is both underpinned and enhanced by the Juche idea. People in the DPRK have a high sense of taking ownership, of stakeholding, which does not exist in any single capitalist country in the world. In capitalist countries, different political parties, groups and factions and ideologies not only represent divisions and social contradictions between the capitalist class and the working class, the bourgeoisie and proletariat, but actually even between different sectors of the capitalist class, i.e. contradictions between monopoly capital and non-monopoly capital, i.e. between the very big capitalists, the transnational and multinational corporations, and small and medium-sized capitalists, or between finance capital, what people call high finance or the city, and other sections of the capitalist class. I mean, in the US, a lot was made about Donald Trump, and he tried to present himself as a radical and an outsider. And the reason for that is he'd made his money through property. He was from the real estate sector of the capitalist class. He was not part of the military industrial complex. So, you know, there was a contradiction between him and other capitalist politicians in the United States, because it didn't make him a progressive at all. And, you know, I think no one should be supporting Donald Trump. In a capitalist country such as the UK or the US or Ireland or Germany, it would be absolutely impossible for any party to win 100% of the vote unless you have fascism. And of course, fascism creates an artificial national unity, which is not real at all. And, you know, I've written about this in my book, Career of Juche. I think many of the criticisms of the DPRK advanced by different people are quite unfair, and they're based on often based on misunderstandings, you know, trying to make direct comparisons between the capitalist political system in countries like the UK and the socialist system in the DPRK. They are two different things, and you can't compare the supreme leadership in the DPRK to capitalist politicians. Lastly, on this subject, I would point out that because the DPRK exercises the dictatorship of the proletariat, former capitalists and landlords are actually barred from voting. But of course, they are a very tiny percentage, in fact, a percentage of a percentage of the population. So that concludes my answer on that subject. And to sort of move on, quite a lot has been made in the imperialist mainstream media of the remarks in Marshall Kim Jung Un's speech on DPRK Foundation Day, September the 9th, in which he said, and I quote, "We are now carrying out steadfastly the policy of building up our nuclear armed forces with exponential increase in the number of nuclear weapons, and our republic's nuclear combat force is being operated under a strict command and control system." End of quotation. Later, On the 13th of September, Marshall Kim Jung Un visited the Nuclear Weapons Institute, the DPRK, and I'm sure everybody's seen the pictures of this, where he's standing by centrifuges. And he pointed out there, and I'll quote, in order to exponentially multiply the nuclear weapons for self-defense, true to the party's line of building the nuclear force, it is necessary to further increase the number of centrifuges, not content with the successes achieved, and at the same time, to enhance the individual separation ability of the centrifuge and push forward with the introduction of a new type centrifuge, which has already reached a completion stage as planned, so as to consolidate the foundation for producing nuclear weapons grade nuclear materials. End of quotation. And I think it should be said that this shows a very impressive level of development in the DPRK, very impressive application of science. This shows how incredible the achievements of people's career are. They've come from virtually nothing to being able to have an advanced nuclear industry and to be able to turn out not just one or two nuclear weapons, but many of them. I think this is a great achievement. Needless to say, there's been a big ballyhoo, a hoo-ha, or hullabaloo in the imperialist mainstream media about the DPRK's nuclear weapons development. And if you read a lot of the mainstream media, you'd think that the DPRK was the only country in the world to have nuclear weapons, that no one else had nuclear weapons, that no one else had carried out nuclear tests or even exploded atomic weapons against the non-nuclear state. And of course, is the USA that has the biggest number of nuclear weapons in the world and has twice used nuclear weapons against a non-nuclear state. And it's also the US that's carried out the biggest number of nuclear tests in the world. But as say, if you read all the Daily Mail or whatever, you'd think only the DPRK was developing nuclear weapons. I think it's a very important fact that nuclear armament is now enshrined in the DPRK's constitution and is an official legitimate state policy of the DPRK. The DPRK's nuclear weapons are purely for self-defense, and they are a legitimate response to the massive threats that the DPRK faces. And got to remember that the DPRK would not only have to fight the US, but South Korea and Japan. Recently, the US and hated ROK puppets have staged nuclear war drills, such as Iron Mace and UG Freedom Shield, in quick succession, threatening people's career and increasing tension on the Korean Peninsula. And from June to August, the US led the multinational RIMPAC exercise, which included armed forces from 29 different countries. Yes, 29 different countries, including, to my shame, Britain and many other countries, including NATO countries. The US is trying to revive the old near defunct so-called United Nations Command in South Korea, which was actually meant to be dissolved. A UN resolution was passed in 1975 calling for its dissolution, but this got ignored. And basically, the Yanks are trying to revive the UN command in South Korea to assemble a multinational force, another so-called coalition of the willing, quote unquote. So I think some people here are probably too young to remember that, but that was the name the Yanks gave to the uh, group of countries they got together to attack Iraq in 2003. The UN command in South Korea consists of those countries that fought on the US side in the last Korean War, plus Germany, which has recently joined, despite not being an original participant, because one thing in the 1950s, Germany was actually two countries. And also, I think in those days, Germany was not allowed to have their own army. Last year, Sleepy Joe Biden, and blimey, everybody seems to have forgotten that he exists, threatened the DPRK with nuclear annihilation, saying that it would be the end of whatever regime. The US and South Korea also formed the so-called Nuclear Consultative Group with the aim of waging nuclear war on the DPRK. It should be remembered that the US illegally introduced nuclear weapons onto the Korean Peninsula in 1956 and kept over 1,000 nuclear weapons in South Korea. Now, someone's going to jump up and down and say, "Oh, but they said they had withdrawn them." Well, we've got no evidence they actually withdrew the weapons. And when asked about the US nuclear weapons in South Korea, they said they would neither confirm nor deny their withdrawal. And I think, the record of the US, in the past speaks for itself. You cannot trust them. And just look what happened to Libya when Colonel Qaddafi, who was once who had been once a great anti-imperialist and socialist, Colonel Qaddafi, and the Green Book. I've got a copy of the Green Book somewhere. Went off the rails and tried to suck up to the imperialists like Tony Blair, and abandoned the Libyan nuclear program, which was still in its infancy. The result was that the US imperialists invaded Libya, and Colonel Qaddafi was killed in the most appalling manner by the savage agents of imperialism. And on to the last subject. Finally, I think we need to reiterate and warn people against fake news and fake talking points about the DPRK. This is perhaps a hot subject. Recently on social media, I saw a lot of people talking about badges in the DPRK, about the portrait badges of the leader. I didn't see the original story, but it seems that someone floated the allegation that the badges had been changed and that they had been replaced. And I was in the DPRK in April. And recently, in Sofia, in Bulgaria, I met a delegation of the Korean Association of Social Scientists, headed by its vice president, and the badges were the same. This is a mischievous story. One infamous deep state disinfo agency is, of course, NK News. which, like its counterpart, the Daily NK, and which is a notorious far-right anti-DPRK website, uh, always full of fake news, always wrong, is based in South Korea and operates with the full blessing of the South Korean puppet fascist regime. And it's a fact that you know, NK news would not be allowed in South Korea, wouldn't be allowed on the territory of the South Korean puppet entity if they didn't toe the line and print what the South Korean puppet authorities tell them. By the way, I'm also quite happy that recently the Chosun symbol, which is a newspaper of Koreans in Japan, quoted my article in Cover Action magazine. I sometimes write for Cover Action magazine, by the way, about NK News. NK News not only creates fake news about the DPRK, but they like to create false talking points about the DPRK in order to confuse and disorientate supporters of the DPRK. Do not get taken in by NK News, because if you do, you're doing the work of the CIA for them for free. So thanks for listening. I will now take a few questions. Okay, just just look at the chat, see what questions I've got. It seems to be mostly comments. I'll have to be careful, don't miss any questions here. Well, there's a lot of stuff about US elections. Right, just going down. Yeah, I don't like Elton John. Just picking up on some of the comments. Wasn't West Germany still Nazi after World War II? Yeah, indeed it was, because the West Germany never properly denazified. Many former Nazis held high positions like judges and generals, etc. I think the important thing to uh, bear in mind is that the big German monopolies like Krupp and Tyson, who were the ones who really put Hitler in power. Let's make no mistake, Hitler would have got nowhere without big business. Uh, they were not broken up, and they were very dominant in West Germany. So yeah, it uh, it was sort of still Nazi after World War II, and also it had the Berufsverbot, if I pronounced it right. I can't, my not good at German pronunciation, but communists were banned from jobs in the public sector in West Germany, and that's something they never ever talk about these days. Yes, go back to sleep, Joe. Yes, indeed. Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. I mean, Libya denuclearized, but in fact, their nuclear program was at a very rudimentary stage. And what they did, and in my opinion, it was total idiocy. They actually handed it over to the US. It was a total abject surrender. Iraq never had nuclear weapons, and it never had weapons of mass destruction. I mean, this was one of the great lies of the Iraq War, that Tony Blair told people about. Supposedly Iraq had weapons of mass destruction. Supposedly had missiles that could reach Britain. It had a long range gun. None of these weapons were ever found after Iraq was invaded. Yes, Sleepy Joe. Yes, he should have a 1 month long nap, or a year long nap. Well, yeah, I've got mixed views on Colonel Qaddafi. I think he was quite good when he led the Libyan revolution, the great Al Fatah revolution in 1969. I think he was quite good, but I think later on he went off the rails. Basically, he was trying to court the favour of different imperialist states. He abandoned the nuclear program. In fact, he even wanted the DPRK to do the same, and offered to visit the DPRK to tell them to give up the nuclear program. But I think for several decades, Libyan people enjoyed a very high standard of living. I think there was many positives of Colonel Qaddafi and Libyan Arab socialism. I wouldn't dismiss him, but I think I'd stop a little bit short of saying that he was actually a great leader. I would say an outstanding anti-imperialist, and of course a martyr to the anti-imperialist cause. Right. Someone calling themselves Joseph Stalin. Dr. Dermot, what are some possible ways the southern half of the Korean Peninsula can be liberated? Well, the DPRK does not want war. It is not going to be the one that starts war. But if the South Korean puppets provoked a war against the DPRK, then the Korean People's Army would go into action and would repulse the offensive of the South Korean puppets, and would liberate South Korea, and it would become part of the DPRK. As for the specific details of the plan, What tactics and strategy would be used, I cannot comment. I mean, these are obviously secret. Yeah, just about the North Korea now channel. I mean, that is run by the South Koreans, so it is South Korea that's has started this rumor about the badges. Right. What happened to the reunification ministry in the DPRK? Well, never was a reunification ministry in the DPRK. However, back in the beginning of this year, all the DPRK institutions dealing with inter-Korean relations, such as the Democratic Front for the Reunification of the Fatherland, were dissolved. Yeah, I agree. DPRK does not need Elton Elton John. I think he's a total rubbish, and I really hated Candle in the Wind. In response to comrade Tiet Lin U from Myanmar, I will try and find the email address of the two embassies concerned, and will send you a message. Well, the nuclear weapons in the DPRK are quite recent. Under President Kim Il Sung, they didn't exist. They only came about when Chairman Kim Jong Il was alive. Uh, Basically, the DPRK's nuclear weapons tests are in response to the ever increasing tension around in and around the Korean Peninsula, and that is why there have been a number of nuclear tests. In fact, there hasn't been a DPRK nuclear test since 2017 for 7 years. I think at some point there will be a seventh nuclear test by the DPRK, but I can't say when. I don't think there have been a lot of nuclear tests by the DPRK, only six. When you compare that to the US and the Soviet Union and China, it is a very small number. Yes, I mean the International Criminal Court is rigged. I only listen to Voice of Korea on the website. I don't have shortwave radio. In answer to uh, i- our Turkish friends' question about the exploding pages in Lebanon. Uh, I mean, it's a very good thing that the DPRK has its own self-reliant Juche-based technology, has its own mobile phone system and its own computers. So the Israelis cannot do this to the DPRK. We must never forget that the Mossad is a very active intelligence agency, and its fingers are everywhere. Was the relationship between the DPRK positive during Trump's presidential term? I think that's not such a simple question as it might seem. It As it might seem, it's actually a complicated question because initially Trump, in the first part of his presidency, was very hostile to the DPRK and talked about destroying the DPRK. Even went to the United Nations, made a very provocative speech there. You know, he was talking about fire and fury. Then all of a sudden, he did an 180-degree turn and started engagement with the DPRK. And I think that was partly in response to the DPRK's very hardline and resolute stance. I think he was actually frightened of conflict with the DPRK and sort of backed off. And he backed off from conflict with the DPRK, and of course, yeah, I mean, he took some measures, like he cancelled some US military exercises in South Korea and scaled down others. Of course, they were never totally done away with in South Korea. Some exercises in South Korea continued, and also the sanctions against the DPRK continued, and the anti-DPRK propaganda continued. Now, I think it's a question for historians and future generations about whether Trump was sincere and what was he really trying to achieve. It looks to me like it was partly done to make himself look good. That you know, he was trying to look better than other US presidents. You know, he was trying to show himself as someone taking a new, fresh approach to the question. And like I said earlier, he is from a different sector of the capitalist class. His money came from real estate, from property. It didn't come from the arms industry or high finance. You know, that's not to deny that he is a capitalist and very wealthy man. My own personal view of Trump with or Trump's engagement with the DPRK is that he might actually well be a bit more clever than people credit him. Uh, uh, you know, people think he is, and in fact, I think he was hoping to try and talk the DPRK into dismantling its nuclear weapons, and also thought that he could also persuade them to give up Juche, to give up the socialist system, to adopt the capitalist system, and that probably he would, for his own businesses, would gain some benefits, you know, such as trying to build Trump hotels in Wonsan or something crazy like that. You know, so I think he was out to honey talk the DPRK into disarmament and giving up the socialist system, but of course they were not fooled, and they did not dismantle a single nuclear weapon or intercontinental ballistic missile, and not a single McDonald's opened in the DPRK. What was my first book? My first book, I believe, was called Behind the Mirror of Lies, which is a short expose of anti-DPRK propaganda. You can buy it on lulu.com. I'll put in a link in the chat a little bit later. And it was followed by a book called The Eternal People's Son. I'm not sure about this missile test. Yes, and we will try to write an article about Juche based technology. Right, Joseph Stalin, Dr. Hudson. Did the NSDAP have socialist origins which Hitler betrayed in order to gain the support of German capitalists? I have seen people saying this online. Well, this is a little bit out of the remit of this discussion. It's a sort of general historical point. I wouldn't say the NSD, NSDAP, the German Nazi Party, had socialist origins at all. I think it was always a right-wing party. And Hitler himself originally worked for the German state. I believe he was an informer for the German police. Now, I mean, it is true that some people in Germany were fooled by fake socialist slogans adopted by the Nazi Party, and supposedly the Nazis had the Strasser right wing, who did apparently advocate anti-capitalism, but the thing was that Hitler actually had one of the Strasser brothers executed, and I think the other one went into exile, and he turned on the working class Nazis, the brown shirts. I don't think it was ever a case that Hitler betrayed the origins of the Nazi Party. I think he was always a right winger and a capitalist, all right from the start. But there were people among his supporters who had illusions about the Nazi Party. Well, I'm not sure about which websites people in the DPRK use, but I know for a fact that students at Kim Jong University were using websites outside of the DPRK, including Facebook. I think the victory against the US and the earlier victory against Brazil uh, in the FIFA uh, women's football games were very impressive. I think it's a great victory for the DPRK, and I hope they beat Japan. In fact, I hope they have a very big win over Japan. I've got no information about the treatment of Koreans in China. Now, Pom Pom Boy and Bolton. Oh, you mean Mike Pompeo? Yeah, that must be Pom Pom Boy. Yeah, yeah, it's true. They strongly push for the Libyan model, and the story is, I don't know how true it was, that they simply handed the DPRK leadership, supreme leadership, a list of weapons they should be uh, get rid of. Well, I mean, this question from from Joseph Stalin. I mean, this is a popular myth. DPRK is not dependent on China, and when it accepted negotiations with the USA, it was nothing to do with so-called dependence on China. It was simply to prevent war and uh, be going down in history as being, as not preventing a war. DPRK is not dependent on China. This is a myth. I've argued it in several articles. And the fact was that when you had the global pandemic, the DPRK actually shut its borders for 4 years. Uh, and it was completely self-reliant. So, I mean, this is one of these myths that the DPRK is dependent on China. Do you plan to write a book about the anti-Japanese war hero Kim Jong Su? Yes, I could. I could. Uh, I could write a book about Madam Kim Jong Suk. I don't really have time. Maybe it's an idea. No, I see. We have a couple of trolls here, so I'm not, banning them. What is your opinion of the presence of Zionists within KFA accommodated by Alejandro? Well, I don't know anything about Zionists in KFA. Yes, I mean, I've spoken I mean, there's some DPRK overseas workers and DPRK diplomats that are on Facebook, which I have had contact with. And yes, I'm in contact with the DPRK embassy in London. Right. Okay. Well, we take a few more A few more questions. What are my thoughts on Christian socialism? Well, again, that's a little bit outside the remit of this live stream, but I will try and answer it. I mean, I'm an atheist myself. However, some Christians uh, say they're socialists. They say that socialism is in line with Christian teachings. So I think that is positive. I think we should work with progressive Christians. Would you approve of Zionists being allowed in KFA? Well, I think the whole question is if people support the DPRK. That's the main question. However, if someone joined the KFA and tried to discriminate against Arab and Palestinian people through KFA, then they should be removed from membership. It's as simple as that. So, uh, I personally wouldn't let people carry out pro-Israel propaganda in KFA. I'm just trying to read and understand uh, one question. According to Alejandro Counterbalance, he said that many embassies, specifically on the Swedish embassy, said that is actually a CIA information sector. What are your thoughts on that? If you're referring to Western embassies in the DPRK, which I think you are, like the Swedish embassy in Pyongyang. Well, yeah, I mean, Sweden apparently represents the US in the DPRK. There's no uh, US embassy in the DPRK, obviously. So it's quite conceivable that the Swedish embassy and other Western embassies in Pyongyang work on behalf of the CIA. It would not surprise me. Yes, I'm in contact with Alejandro, and he was only briefly arrested, and was released. The DPRK is a secular state, but it's not an atheist state. In fact, the only country in the world ever to declare itself for atheist was Albania. They declared themselves atheist. The DPRK does guarantee religious freedom in its constitution, and there are Christian churches, Catholic, Protestant, and Russian Orthodox. And there's also Buddhists in the DPRK, and there's Chondoism. I myself have actually been to the Catholic Church in the DPRK in 1993, so I can tell you that it is real, it does exist. And I've also seen the big Protestant church from the distance and the Russian Orthodox church. And there's also a mosque in the grounds of the Iranian embassy. Yes, I mean Alejandro's detention was an outrage, and it was something staged by Spanish authorities acting on behalf of the US imperialists. Right, well, I'll just take one more question, and then I think we'll uh, call it a day. Yeah, I mean with Alejandro, basically, he got accused of breaking US sanctions because of a conference in 2019 on cryptocurrency in the DPRK. Of course, Alejandro wasn't at the conference himself, and he only had a minor role in organising it. And of course, US sanctions don't apply in Spain or any other country in the world except the US. But the FBI tried to get Alejandro arrested, but he was released within about 24 hours by the Spanish police. Well, I don't know what if the US have thrown the people who attacked the DPRK embassy in Madrid under a bus. I mean, this was a despicable terrorist action in which criminal thugs attacked the DPRK embassy in Madrid in February 2019. Coincidentally, very near to the uh, you know, very near in time to the second DPRK US summit in Vietnam, and I wonder whether the action was to try and scupper the summit. These people attacked the DPRK embassy in Madrid and attacked women and children. They've never been brought to court for it. They're still at large. They're supposed to be uh, taken to Spain to be charged. Yeah, I mean that's an interesting point. Whether, yeah, I mean, but that's how the US acts. They let the minions, the lackeys, get into trouble. Uh, all the time, and I think anyone who works for the USA needs to take this into account. Right. Well, I think we've had quite a few questions, and I think it's time to call it a day. This stream will be uploaded, and I'll be sharing it on all the YouTube channels. Uh, sorry, not the YouTube channels, all the social media pages of KFA UK and the British Group for the Study of the Juche dear. I'll put it on all of them, and hopefully I'll be back in about a month with another live stream. I think it's been good tonight, and thank everybody for their comments. Okay, good night, and have a good evening. Goodbye now.